1930s, poor farming practices, severe droughts, and homeowners that should have been more responsible were the major contributing factors to the Dust Bowl. This historical disaster serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of irresponsible resource management of individuals and governments' choices. It highlights our responsibility to use our rights wisely, learn from past mistakes, and that we should take proactive measures to address future challenges, ultimately aiming to prevent health crises and reduce environmental damage. In 1862, the Homestead Act was passed, giving Americans the right to 160 acres of unused land in the Great Plains to develop and farm on. After the act was passed, 4 million people moved to this land. These people were new to farming and came from diverse or no background in farming agriculture. In the 1890s, tractors were invented. These people should have been more responsible with their newfound technology, but they stripped away the native plants and animals, leaving the topsoil exposed. Additionally, the farmers overproduced cotton and wheat, which partially led to the Great Depression. People grew an excess amount of crops. The ability to try and make enough money to sustain themselves with the low prices became challenging, thus setting themselves up for disaster. They had been irresponsible with their rights to land and had got rid of the once sustainable environment, turning it into a barren wasteland. Then, when drought and wind mixed with the dry, nutrient-depleted land, the Dust Bowl formed. The Dust Bowl affected 75% of America, destroying the land and leaving excess soil in unwanted places along the way. Dust storms and extreme drought wreaked havoc on the country as it buried crops, homes, and entire communities in dirt. On top of this, breathing became a challenge, as the thick dust filled the air and clogged lungs. An unsettling journal entry written by a man named Alex, who was caught in the Dust Bowl, captures the overwhelming discomfort of the time. Quote, "We have always believed that after bad things, good things always follow, but it seems as if the good will never come. After the dust came, many neighbors decided to leave, but our family as a whole decided we can make it out of this. Everyone is tired of the dust and has acquired a hatred for it because of the constant wind and the sand and dust blowing. It seems as if it's everywhere now, beneath every piece of furniture, in every piece of clothing, filling every corner in the house. We cleaned the dust in vain and gave up after we realized the dust would flow into the area we cleaned minutes later." End quote. The land, once fertile and full of life, was reduced to a dry dirt heap. The irresponsible actions of the farmers horribly affected many people. As historian Timothy Egan wrote in his book, The Worst Hard Time, quote, "The tractors had done what no hailstorm, blizzard, tornado, drought, nothing in the natural history of the southern plains had ever done." In 1931, when the first of over 200 dust storms started, it signaled the start of an environmental disaster. These relentless storms, known for the intensity, wreaked havoc on the environment, continuing for the next 8 years. Entire regions were left in chaos, with people's basic rights of food and water and shelter stripped from them. But soon after, help arrived in the form of a new president. On May 12, 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected as the 32nd President of the United States. His administration took action immediately, authorizing $200 million through the Emergency Farm Mortgage Act to provide relief to farmers who had been hit the hardest by the disaster. Despite the government's efforts, the worst of the Dust Bowl was yet to come. On April 14, 1935, the United States experienced one of the most destructive storms in history, Black Sunday. Visibility during this storm was nearly zero, as millions of pounds of dust swept across the plains. Homes were buried under dirt, and families found themselves struggling to survive in these horrifying conditions. The storm was a dark reminder of the severity of the situation. The government should have given more support and attention to the situation, because at this time they were still overlooking the situation and its severity. But after this, FDR's leadership only expanded. He established several government committees dedicated to rebuilding the environment, helping families rebuild their farms, and educating citizens on better farming practices. New techniques were used, such as planting native grasses to prevent soil erosion and using crop rotation to maintain the land. FDR and his companions were a true example of leadership. They stuck to their responsibility as a government to help and support the people. But even after all the government did, it wasn't until the fall of 1939 that the Dust Bowl was finally beginning to end. The return of rain to the region provided the needed nutrients, allowing the land to begin its slow recovery. However, the scars of the Dust Bowl still showed.
Why does remembering this matter? Well, the actions of the farmers who misuse their land is something we must learn from and improve on. Their carelessness created terrible problems for not only themselves, but millions around them. And even with all that the government did, the Dust Bowl didn't stop until the rain finally came. That is something to be wary of. So what can we do? We have a responsibility to use our rights thoughtfully, ensuring our actions don't harm others. And although mistakes are inevitable, we have a responsibility to learn from the past. Technology and social understanding can also help in this endeavor. Some advancements the U.S. has made to combat a future Dust Bowl include teaching and promoting more sustainable farming practices, building things like dams, restoring the environment, and increasing environmental awareness. According to Yale Climate Connections, some things farmers can do are planting more drought-resistant strains of corn and wheat, leaving crop residue on the fields to cover the soil, and planting trees to break the wind. We have a responsibility to aid all of the efforts made by the government to prevent and prepare ourselves for another misfortune. Recently, a scientific study was published stating that the drought and temperatures that caused the Dust Bowl are 2.5 times more likely to happen now because of current climate change. We have a newfound responsibility to promote technological advancements in order to understand, prepare for, and prevent natural disasters like the Dust Bowl. As the old saying by writer and philosopher George Santayana goes, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Dust Bowl had devastating impacts on agriculture, society, and the environment. Massive crop failure and poor soil management caused drought and created unusable conditions for millions of acres of farmland. With crops not being able to grow, food shortages increased, and many farmers lost their only source of income. This collapse forced thousands of families, particularly from Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and surrounding states, to migrate west in search of work. These migrants, referred to as Okies, faced harsh conditions and limited job opportunities, especially in California. The people that did stay had to face terrible living conditions. This letter, written by Dust Bowl survivor, shows some of the uncomforts they experienced. We have a frenzied time of cleaning, anticipating the comfort of a clean feeling once more. We keep the doors and windows all shut tight. With wet papers on the sills, the tiny particles of dirt sift right through the walls. 2 different times it has been an inch thick on my kitchen floor. Our faces look like coal miners. Our hair is gray and stiff with dirt, and we grind dirt in our teeth. The dust storms posed serious health risks, with many people suffering from respiratory issues including dust pneumonia. Fine dust particles contaminated food and water, increasing malnutrition and disease, while livestock died out due to inhaling dust and the loss of farmland. The environmental damage was harsh, as over-farming had destroyed the topsoil, leading to degradation. Dust storms carried soil as far as the East Coast, darkening skies and spreading the disaster all over America. The event left a mark on both the landscape and the American psyche. It highlighted the vulnerability of the farming community and the importance of responsible land management. Although the storms left a mark on the surface, the lessons learned during the Dust Bowl continue to shape practices and policies to this day. In response to this, the federal government implemented conservation programs to stop future soil degradation. The Soil Conservation Act of 1935 led to the Soil Conservation Service, now the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which promoted sustainable farming practices. Programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, and the Works Progress Administration, WPA, created jobs for displaced workers, focusing on land restoration and infrastructure projects. These helped lay the foundation for environmental conservation policies. Ultimately, the Dust Bowl served as an important time for American agriculture, showing the importance of responsible land management and government support in times of crisis. The lessons Americans learned from this continue to shape farming practices, environmental policies, and disaster preparedness today.